basis around the country in real time from my home. That's the gamut that what we do right now, much like we're doing right now. But it's very sophisticated technology, and it's a very sophisticated way of being able to teach. Anything you can do online, just about, or in person, you can do online, but it's a different training technique. It's a different teaching technique. So what we've taken, say, 15 years to learn, people had to, on Friday, know that they're going online on Monday and learn what we learned in 20 years in 20 minutes, and that's just not possible. I own my own company, and what we did is we created a book in 3 days to be able to help people hopefully learn what we know and not reinvent the wheel. And we've been doing consulting work since this started, to be able to say, here are our office hours. I've got it's free. I'll get everybody copies if you want it, to be able to, what can you do so you're not reinventing the wheel? 3 months from now, 6 months from now, it'll be a piece of cake. But it takes years to learn how to do these things, whether it's at the child level, whether it's the corporate level, whether it's the higher ed level. And so it's just a matter of learning these new skills, because just because you can be a participant online is not the same thing as being a teacher of those skills online. And that's the strategy that we academics who are online and have been for 15 years, this is what we do. So again, a little guilt that my world didn't shape, it just ramped up. And now I'm doing a lot more lecturing and speaking and teaching. So if there's anybody here, I'll hop on a call with you and teach you as much as I can in the time that we have to help you do better, because you only have to know more than your students. And that's all that it is be one step ahead of them and then go get the next step and then come back and be a hero. So as a dad, I can make you a hero. Your kids are going to know. And then tomorrow we'll learn something new so you can impress them tomorrow. It's just how do you eat the elephant? But it can be very daunting when you have 1,000 things you need to do and you have to only learn how to do one thing at a time, because it can be stressful. And we'll get there. It's going to be a new tool in the toolbox, but probably not for a few months.
Wow. So for just as a little bit of housekeeping here, there's a chat box down on the bottom. So if anyone doesn't want to just jump in or make a comment and want to throw it in the chat box, I'm happy to navigate that. And if there's any topics that anyone wants to discuss, you can throw them in there if you don't want to. And you don't want to, mention it, and that's, Cheryl, that's an important, it's an important point, because what people were doing before, not in a virtual setting, they're now needing to be just as effective in a virtual setting. And I guess that's excluding people that were already doing things virtually. So how are we doing that? I mean, I see Mark James there. And I know that historically, you might jump in a car and go see a customer. So how have you been able to navigate not being able to get in a car and go see a customer, and just how has it changed your day?
Well, for me, I'm a little like Dr. Cheryl. My practice is consulting to businesses and helping them improve the performance of people and processes. And I work out of my home, so I'm used to doing the be at home thing. It's natural, and so there really was very little impact on how I manage my day. In terms of not being able to be in front of clients face to face, a little bit of a challenge. I'm classically trained in terms of my career that face-to-face is the way to do business and to build really strong relationships. But you have to weigh that against the obvious challenges and restrictions we have right now. So I've been spending more time using things like Zoom and good old phone calls to stay in touch. And I'm also working on doing some housekeeping things that I wouldn't do normally, because in the heat of everyday business, you're focusing on clients. But I've got some time to work on things like I'm completely redoing my website to make it more as a consultants facing website, which is really what my practice is, as opposed to just services per se. So I'm doing some things like that. But to summarize real quickly, you still have to keep in touch with people. And you use technologies like this. And the other suggestion that I have for my clients and for everybody here, now's the time to focus on not so much hard selling, but focus on being of service to your clients and your prospects. I remember I grew up in a a small farming town west of Aurora, Illinois. And one of the things I recall, my parents own and operate a retail store. So I had a lot of friends who were in farming. And one of the things I recall about being a kid growing up in farm country is that John Deere had and has a huge loyal following of farmers. And when you understand the history of John Deere, one of the reasons that they had that very loyal following is because they went out of their way in the early days of their existence, and during tough times like the Depression and other areas, they went out of their way to make sure that farmers could use their equipment, and they would make accommodations, and they ensured themselves loyalty for not only a generation but generations. And so I think the thing to do right now for people that are struggling, for businesses that are struggling, you'll be remembered if you were the John Deere to them when times were toughest, as opposed to focus just on selling. The selling part will come because of that. So those are a couple words of wisdom from me to answer that question.
So Mark, something that comes to mind is I hear that, and that's a great story. I didn't know that. But when you talk about serving, or I forget the words that you use, but just being there for your customers, or being there for the people that you're surrounded with, whomever those people are. But then, like, John Deere was there for their customers in ways that the company wasn't designed to be. It's like, don't you need to know what those customers or people are needing right now?
Yeah. The more you understand, what their pain points are, and especially right now, what their fears and frustrations are. Some of those fears and frustrations are obvious. Some businesses are wondering, am I going to be able to reopen when I'm allowed to? I mean, what am I going to do? I've put my entire life savings. I've mortgaged my house more than once to have this business and keep it together, and I may not be able to reopen. Talk about the mother of all fears for a business person. So, that implies very directly, you have to show empathy. And empathy is a great key to unlock a relationship.
So is this, does this resonate with anyone? Do we have people that are maybe not have, I think customers might have I don't know, not a connotation to it, but indicate direct sales. But I mean, I think customers can be defined in a lot of different ways. If you're an educator, your customer might be your students. If you work within government, your customer might be another part of government. There's a lot of different ways that you can look at who your customer is. So how are others, and I see Bob's here on the line, as an attorney, how has this been changing kind of your, not go-to-market strategy, but how does this put you in a different position?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I guess I would say, my clientele is primarily big corporate institutions. I run a small law firm specializing in patents, intellectual property. And I would say I expect to see the impact of this pandemic in a few months. Right now, my business is almost continuing uninterrupted. I guess, I have empathy for people who are suffering and people who are out of work, but thankfully my business and all my people are fully engaged, even more work than we can get done, all remotely. We've been a virtual paperless office. Well, we have a physical office in Chicago that's empty now, but we've been, fully online and paperless for years. So I don't expect to see any downturn until all these companies start having to tighten their belts and reduce their patent budgets and things like that. I guess, yay for me. I don't know. It's maybe one good story that's out there. I think there are firms out there. I know of other law firms that are in a similar situation. They're not really, it depends on the type of practice that you have. I don't have a lot of small clients. If I had smaller inventors, garage inventors who were trying to decide, well, do I continue with my venture, my startup, my idea? Do I continue to pursue intellectual property protection, or do I pay my mortgage, right? So those kinds of firms maybe are having a more immediate impact because of their clientele, but so far so good for me. One thing I did want to comment on, back to your other question of, how are you getting through this? How is your life changing? I would just throw out there my own observation about I have 10 employees. My firm, I've seen people shifting their work schedules to later in the day. Attorneys always, are kind of tend to work later hours. But what I'm seeing now is, for me personally and others in my practice, they're engaged more at home in the morning with kids home from school, maybe with exercise. And so spending more time on personal matters intermixed with business, getting some emails out, doing some things, but more family home time in the morning, and work hours are shifting later and later. And so it's often, 7 or 8 or 9 before I'm actually done. But even then, I might pick up the phone and be answering emails or texts. So that's the major thing I've seen shifting in my day-to-day, is kind of a that kind of early morning family and home engagement, and work hours shifting later, which is fine with me. So
Yeah. Bob, that brings up an interesting topic, which is work-life balance. Before all this happened, you had this moniker word that would be thrown out as, oh, I need to achieve work-life balance. What the heck is that? It was something that I'd heard people talk about, and it's almost like over the last, 6 weeks now, we've had like this forced shift to figure it out. And what you just said is it gets right at the heart of it. It's like the bell curve. Well, the bell curve was us all like working tons of hours in the beginning, but now all of a sudden it's like figuring out what the right balance is. And I don't know, what is everyone else's opinion? Because I know where I'm at right now. I'm looking at it saying, hey, as soon as the doors open and I can go back to work, I don't know that I'm going to go back to the office 5 days a week. I kind of like having a couple days at home where I can just focus on things and be productive. What does everyone else think? Is this new? Is it better? Is it worse?
Let me throw out a real quick response. I know I just talked a bit, but real quick, my view is I'm happy to never go back to the office again. I've had a couple people express concern that I might not renew the lease. We're up for a renewal in the spring. I'm like, I don't need that. But I realize that not everyone's in my situation. Not everyone has a basement, where they can hang out uninterrupted from kids. I know at least 2 of my 10 employees are anxiously awaiting human contact through going to the office and getting out of the house. At least 2 of them are concerned that I might keep remote working in place, like permanently. So that's my 2 cents.
I'd like to answer too. Hi, I'm Teresa Mueller, and I actually have rarely gone to U of I events, even though I was there for all of the 90s, because I did undergrad and then I taught for many years, et cetera. But part of the reason I didn't go to a lot of events is because I was always so busy working all the time. It's like, well, am I going to get all the way across town to go to the event, et cetera? but having these Zoom meetings, I've been more effective in being able to reach out to other people. And just a little bit background besides, I used to teach geology courses and engineering optimization in the engineering economy optimization, et cetera, stuff between 2 different departments at U of I. And now I sell real estate, commercial real estate, and I'm also on radio. And one of the topics that I'm going to talk about tomorrow, because I'm now recording instead of actually going into the studio. In fact, someone called me the other day and said, "Can you work on the sound acoustics for the radio?" And I'm like, it's my office. So I'm going to be working on that today to kind of, I did work on my wall for when people have to look at my wall, because it used to be a blank wall for all these Zoom sessions. But one of the topics that the topic I'm going to discuss tomorrow is going back to work. Like, what are strategies if people want to be out in the workplace? Because some people say, I'm totally fine, like doing all this stuff from home and not having to commute. Other people are like, I'm really missing the social interaction. I'm really missing whatever it is, that form. And I always tease that I'm going to have to go to therapy to say I once was a hugger. And so strategies for making businesses and properties safe going forward, right? Because this is going to change the whole dynamic of how we move forward, and everyone has a different feeling about how we should, but it's unlikely that everyone's going to want to stay inside their house all day, every day, forever, that we're just social creatures. So what are some of the mechanisms that we can implement to make it a safe place? And by the way, I'm going to connect with some of you on LinkedIn. If you have any good stories to share with me, whether it's here or later on, I'd love to hear them on how, your business has made it safely. So anyway, thanks for listening to my spiel. Teresa Mueller, thanks.
Hey, Mike, it's Tom Wazlowski. How you doing?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good, good. I just wanted to say that I've been working from home for about the last 2 years, based out of my home, but every day I'm up and out and meeting people, out in the restaurants and coffee shops and things like that. So it's been quite an adjustment. However, I basically just shifted from all of my in-person meetings to now doing it over the phone and via email and Zoom calls and such. And so it hasn't been too difficult of an adjustment, but I am kind of itching to get back to getting out there and seeing people and drinking the coffee with them and that type of thing. So that's the how I've been kind of transitioning into it, into this new world. But the other thing I just wanted to mention real quick is that in the insurance business, well, I'm in the life insurance business, and so my agents have been able to continue. Business is definitely down. However, because a lot of people don't want to meet face to face. However, in order to keep the business flowing, to some extent, we have been able to use technology, and we have something called eApp, which is an application that can be done over the phone and sent to the client via email, and then the client reviews it, clicks on it, approves it, sends it back to the agent. The agent then submits it, and it gets processed. And then from the standpoint of underwriting, our company has made some adjustments from the standpoint of, where they ordinarily may have required a paramedic exam. We have now gone to looking at medical records in the case that the person has been to the doctor in the last year and they had lab tests done. We can use those now. So those are just some of the things that our industry has done to, and our company has done to, adapt. So I just wanted to mention that.
That's awesome, Tom. I mean, are others seeing, excuse me, are others seeing industries adapt?
Oh, yeah. This is Mike. I've been talking to a lot of customers because a lot of my stuff is going to involve, and probably same with you, Mike, it's the whole going back question has as much to do with when your customers are going back, because just me going back in my office really isn't going to make any difference. I can do most of it from here because of what I do. It's really more important from my standpoint of what the customers are doing. So I've been talking a lot to a lot of different customers that I have, and they've really gone into a lot of details as far as strategies. A couple of them are essential services like banking. and they've already done some things where they've kind of separated the week, but they like the one place they have like what they've started what they call blue green days, and half the office is in part of the time and then the other half is in the other days, and then they actually disinfect the entire banks over the weekend so that when they come back the next week it's kind of starting over again. And some of the other customers that I have been strategizing about going back and kind of doing something similar, that half the team will be in like Monday, Wednesday, half will be in like Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday will be kind of a as needed day. And then if somebody needs files or something like that, that they have set up something where they can even, like in the banking thing, that the person can either just use the drive-through or the vestibule, that they'll leave documents if somebody's forgotten something. So a lot of customers are already talking about how is the phasing back in going to work and how long, and then it's just a question for how long is that going to be. Maybe it's longer than we think it's going to be. Maybe it's going to be something that's going to last quite a while. So really for me, it has more to do with when are my customers back in their offices and when are they actually able to do some things rather than, our office that we have and when I'm actually going to be back in that, because most of what I do, I can actually do from my office here at home. So.
See, Mike, that's it's interesting because if it's a steady increase or mixing in with schedules and getting back to work, what I'm hearing is there's going to be a call it a second round of cases that are going to peak more like in the November timeframe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if it's a slow increase in getting back to work, well, then if we hit something like that in November, is that going to extend things even longer? Are we looking at this being, if we have some big spike in November, does that mean we're going to be more restricted and we might see maybe a general, maybe not as restricted as we are now, but something for a lot longer period of time?
You know what? That depends. I mean, because if you really go back and look at it, even the stuff that we're doing across the country as far as locking stuff down, if you recall, it didn't initially start to keep people from getting the disease. It was really about not overwhelming the health system. And that's really what governed a lot of that type of stuff. I think at some point in time, you're going to just see things will start to open up to some degree, and I think they're just going to kind of watch the numbers and stuff a little bit. But I don't think anybody thinks that, hey, we're gonna be able to all just kind of, especially I live kind of in a rural area where a lot of people aren't in our type of work and stuff. Most of the people I know are still going to work every day. I mean, most of the people that live around me are still going to work every day. They're in some kind of they're in transportation. They're in some kind of essential service. They work for one of the plants down here, or they work for ComEd, and which is one of the biggest employers in my area. Those people aren't sitting those people aren't sitting at home working. It's a large group of people that are making some kind of concessions, and they're coming up with some kind of programs to allow them to do that. But really the are still going into work every day. When you look at a lot of the stuff, or at least in certain industries across the country, because they just don't have the ability to do it like we do it here, where we can sit and make the calls or have some kind of, online app and stuff. So I think it's just going to be a matter of kind of, I fully expect that when everything kind of opens back up, that you're going to see some slight uptick of some kind, and I think it's, it might be a little naive to think that we're going to be able to get all the way down to the fact where it's not affecting everybody before people go back to work and go back to offices and stuff. So,
and this is for Dave Bambry is the question that really comes to mind, and with 3 kids that are going to be in college next year, makes me wonder with having kids on a campus in such close proximity, is that going to cause that to be, I don't know, more of a hot spot and give rise to maybe more incidents? Or am I looking at that in the wrong way? How is, say, the University of Illinois looking at something like this? And David, maybe you want to, you could introduce yourself for those that don't know you.
Sure. Yeah, so my Zoom is doing something kind of interesting here. So my video and phone haven't synced up for whatever reason. So, but anyway, I'm Dave Bambury. I serve as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Alumni Relations at the University of Illinois Alumni Association. And I think it's a really interesting question, Mike. I think that, you know, it's something that I know our leadership, the institution is looking at. And, you know, we just received some word this morning from the president about they're setting up a number of different committees about, you know, how we bring people back and when we bring people back, and working with obviously some of the great minds in healthcare to figure out, you know, what obviously makes sense from a safety standpoint, but also, you know, knowing that that in-person facilitation of classes is the goal here. So, you know, I think that obviously that's for the chancellor and the president, to chancellors and the president to decide. But you know, I think, just this is me speaking as David, not necessarily as the U of I. When you think about bringing, you know, 45,000 kids, students from all of these different areas, yeah, how does that play into this? And you know, all those different environments that they've lived in, and now getting them back to campus, it'll be interesting. But you know, I think that you know, again, that our leadership of the institution's done a really strong job of making decisions, and I think from what we've heard, our feedback from our alumni and friends of the institution, I think that, you know, most people agree with the decisions that they've made from the standpoint of COVID-19. And so I don't think they're making any of them lightly, obviously, but, you know, I think that obviously we want to be back on campus. And I think I'm in an interesting spot that I can do most of my work remotely. And, you know, I travel quite a bit, so we can certainly do those things, or we're used to working in that capacity some, but we're thinking a lot at the Alumni Association about how we engage virtually. And we were already heading in that direction, but this has only sped that process up. We know we've got to be in that space and deliver in this way. And, you know, as you mentioned, Mike, there's talks of something again in the fall or winter. So I think we've got to be ready for, you know, engaging our folks in the appropriate way. So yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know that I've got any insider info or anything like that, but I know that they're working hard to make sure that everybody's safe, but at the same time to get back to some sort of normal here before long.
You know, and I have a follow-up question to that, and I don't know if anyone has any kids that are in college or going into college, but something I heard at the dinner table last night, which just kind of caused me to you know, pause for a second, was my daughter, who's a senior for the next couple of weeks, and then she's moving on to college. She said that if campus wasn't opened up again in the fall, that she probably wouldn't go. She'd probably go to the community college for the semester, because why pay $10,000, whatever it is, for a semester when she could just as effectively work from home at a community college that's 2 miles away? And I guess I wonder, do you see this causing maybe a larger shift in the way kids are choosing to be educated down the road?
I think it's possible. I still think that, you know, it's like any college decision. You've got to weigh, and everyone's decision is different, but you've got to weigh the quality of the education, the quality of how the program is going to be delivered. You know, I do think with things like Zoom, there is still that level of interaction that you can get with, you know, other classmates and the professor. So, you know, in a virtual capacity, I think, you know, learning is going to be different, but I don't know that it has to be a detractor from the quality, or, you know, obviously the professors are still going to be the professors. They're still going to be delivering the information. So, you know, it wouldn't obviously be the same experience potentially with not being on campus, but, you know, like any decision, you've got to weigh the quality of, you know, what you would get at a U of I, which is obviously a top level school, as compared to, you know, a community college, which still provides a quality education, but you know, there are those decisions and tiers for a reason. So, So yeah, I mean, I think it's something I've heard about. I don't know that I've got a lot of information how the university feels as though it's going to affect enrollment or affect potential enrollment, but it's certainly something that, you know, I think just in the higher ed industry overall, we've heard that speculation at least.
Interesting point though, Mike, because I mean, you know, 18-year-old kids, they make college decisions as much for social reasons as they do for, you know, for anything else. And when you say, hey, we're yanking that part out of the equation, yeah, what is that? Yeah, I guess that I hadn't really given that much thought, but I guess that could be a big factor in
I
deciding
had
what
not
you
given
wanted to
that
do.
much thought until last night.
I'm a sorority girl, and I'll tell you, those are some of the greatest times at the university.
Hard to imagine if I would
Virtual
have been.
sororities.
That might be a little tough for virtual Zoom. I'm telling you.
Hard to imagine that any of us who matriculated through Illinois and were on campus, hard to imagine how things would have been different if we never had the learning that naturally comes from living in that environment and interacting with people. There's as much
Sure.
learning that goes on there as you get out.
To school and my master's and my doctorate, but I really had fun in my undergrad at U of I. I'm just saying.
Yep.
See, this may be me, but I think there is a direct correlation between everyone who's on this call, our ability to just pick up a conversation with pretty much anyone. I mean, when you think about it, hey, we were all on campus. We all were around tens of, you know, thousands of other kids, and we just let's just call it a skill that we picked up.
Yeah, if you just saw Teresa's comment in chat, she's glad, and I agree with her, that Facebook wasn't around when we were in school.
That's true.
Those pictures are in a closed book that no one has access to.
Cell phones.
Yeah, right.
So,
only my college roommate knows where the bodies are buried, so to speak, you know?
That's interesting.
Yeah, just recently, some people from high school, I'm really glad there's no phones in high school. They started taking pictures from high school, taking pictures of those pictures and then posting them on Facebook. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Defeats the purpose.
I lived in Vegas for a while, and Vegas has it, what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. No, it doesn't. It stays on YouTube. I'm just
There
saying.
you go.
So I have another couple questions. I've been in a lot of business meetings, you know, because I sell commercial real estate, so I stay connected with a lot of the entrepreneurial community. And, you know, we would have an agenda. And one of the big things that I think that we've been talking about, so there's a couple things. One is what we're all doing to create win-wins for our customers and clients so that we can go forward. Is it, you know, helping the community, you know, and a big thing for me right now is also where to donate, because so many people are saying GoFundMe and da-da-da, and I'm like, well, and people need food and shelter. So that's where I'm choosing to donate, is to make certain, you know, I've learned, like, for example, Aurora, the food pantry completely ran out for Aurora. I mean, no food, you know, a week ago. So that has been my big push. So creating win-wins for, you know, people in ways that you can. And then my second question is, and I could type these in the chat, is what is an aha moment that you've had in this time of reflection, or, you know, more me time or whatever? And maybe you haven't. I really actually have had less me time because somehow I seem to be busier, but this seems to reflect our prior lives, I suppose. So feel free to jump in.
So Teresa, I have a question for you. How, being in the real estate industry, I can't imagine how you're going to go from everyone being quarantined, not being able to come within 10 feet of each other, to then having someone enter someone's house and walk through it. I mean, I don't know if you have to sanitize it or before every single person that walks through it, or is it all virtual? How are you adapting there?
So I talked about this on radio as real estate as an essential business, because a lot of people didn't realize in Illinois that it is an essential business. Like places like New York, they completely shut down. They're not doing anything. And so it's a state by state, even a municipality by municipality in terms of their choices. But what we've deemed real estate as an essential business in Illinois, which means we can continue to show owner-occupied properties with permission, so per their specs, and I'll come back to that in a second, and vacant properties. We may not show any tenant-occupied properties. That is not allowed. So if you have a rental property, theoretically, it is not allowed. You could ask them, but you don't have the legal authority to do it, and you can call law enforcement if, you know, tenants are there and they're saying, hey, I'm not allowing this, because that's a violation of their rights at the moment. But in terms of showing like owner occupied where people are in, I am advising, you know, my agents and other agents to meet people where they're at, because everyone has a different perception of, you know, some are like, sell my house, do whatever you need to do. I don't really care. I'll go bunker down with a relative or something, to others that are saying, you know what, it's not even worth me selling my house at the time. And so I actually have several showing appointments tomorrow, because I started in residential, but then I've moved to commercial, and that's a different story why I started doing more commercial. But I still do have friends and family that ask me to help them on the residential side. And so I have a list of showings that I'm planning on doing tomorrow, most of which are vacant. So that makes it easy. I do have my own mask. I have multiple masks. I have the N95. I have the one that you could throw in the washer. So I have multiple masks. I have multiple gloves. I actually have like 10 sets of gloves, and I just keep on washing them. I will wear a hoop skirt if you want social distancing, proper 6 feet social distancing. But the point is meet people where they're at. And so these showings that I had tomorrow, I had 5 lined up. 4 said yes because it wasn't a problem, but 1, she called, asked a bunch of questions, and I said, I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do, And she's like, well, do they know that I don't have a full or a finished basement? Do they know what the house looks? I said, well, you could look for reasons not to sell your house. I said, but it's up to you whether you want to show it or not. I said, and if you want to, I'm happy to accommodate, if you want me to bring wipes or a mask or whatever. So it's always a matter of a conversation to see where people feel comfortable. Obviously, vacant makes it a lot easier because they're going to have less restrictions. And it's the same in any business, right? Like, what do you need to happen to make you come back and make you feel safe and comfortable? Because if we shut down real estate, first of all, we for sure would have went straight into depression if we shut down some of the largest parts of our economy, right? Mm-hmm. But eventually, and I agree, who was it that said it? Was it Mike? I agree that people are going to have to get sick. This is there's not going to be, we need herd immunity. This was when we did this, it wasn't the idea that no one gets sick. The idea is exactly, healthcare was going to be overwhelmed if we just let it go. And so we need to look at business practices and how we can change them so that we could start reopening up the economy and have people feel safe that they can re-engage. And the people who don't feel safe, stay at home and continue, to do what you're doing. So that's my soapbox a little bit too.
Well, I had no idea that real estate was a necessary industry.
Yeah, it's such a large part of our economy. If we shut it down, and some people have to move, they don't have a choice for whatever the reason is. If we shut it down, we quickly would have gone into depression. I mean, believe me, there's plenty of real estate agents who are not making money at the moment. I mean, in general, they don't actually, there's thousands and thousands of agents, circulating around me that are not making any money. But in the end, there are reasons why people have to move. We don't know that we just can't shut down every aspect. And it's such a large part of our economy. And for what it's worth, one of the businesses that I'm doing forward and that I'm helping is short-term leasing of commercial real estate. What's going to happen after this? We're going to have a lot of vacancy in the commercial area. Less so than the residential, because people still need a place to live. But some businesses, like Mr. Irvine had suggested, some of them, they're just not going to come back, right? Or, if they do come back, it's going to be repurposed. If you have office space and people are kind of going down in office space, Maybe they might need more because they need more social distancing. But I'm focusing on short term because on the supply side, we're gonna have a lot of vacancy. And from the demand side, people who are opening up businesses, they're gonna be really leery right now, like whether they're gonna survive or not. And so they're not gonna wanna commit to a 5 or 10-year lease. So that's how I'm helping my clients now is, negotiating contracts and getting it down to shorter terms that so people feel like, okay, at least I'm covered for now.
If
Yeah,
I
there's
could build on what
Go
Teresa
ahead.
just said and to answer her question about how you build win-wins for your clients right now, the thing that I'm focusing on to answer that question is to encourage clients to go back to the basics. Now is the time to take a look and look at things as simple as what are your core values and mission and vision? Revisit those. When you understand that for a typical organization, less than half of the people understand or even know what their own organization's values, mission, and vision are. So now would be a good time to reintroduce those to employees and to other stakeholders. Look at your processes. Naturally, over time, a lot of inefficiencies and redundancies get built in the work processes, such if you eliminate them, you can be more efficient coming out of this, which gives you a leg up perhaps on your competition. Another interesting statistic related to that, in a typical organization, as much as 50 to 75% of the activities an employee do add zero value to the final outcome. So if you can eliminate those things, imagine what happens to productivity and a more positive customer experience. There are a whole different list of what I call back to basics that a business can and should do right now. And it allows you to also focus on positive things rather than on the fear and frustration itself. And it also puts you in a better position to untap and recognize that in any crisis, there is always opportunity. And you're more apt to find the opportunity if you have the right frame of mind and you're going back to basics and looking for ways to improve how you operate and how your people perform and what they think, and if they understand what their expectations are. So that's how they would answer that question. I think it was a nice build on what Teresa had to say.
Absolutely. And something that I'm seeing right now is, and I think we're all seeing it, is how our healthcare system is just being, stretched to its maximum and kind of being pushed beyond its limits. And it's interesting because portions of it, so I'm in the healthcare industry, and portions of it are being pushed beyond its capacity. Other portions of it aren't being used at all. So I think the percentages between 30 and 60% of planned surgeries aren't being done.
Yeah, hospitals are laying people off right now.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Some emergency room doctors are being laid off. Primary care doctors are strapped for cash because no one's going into the office for that normal office visit. So, Mark, when you talk about innovation, what I'm seeing on the healthcare side is people that were kind of scared of leveraging things like telemedicine. Well, now they're getting used to it, right?
I had an appointment earlier this month that was all video. So
So it's like when you look at the supply chain of healthcare, if you can take 15% of your spend and basically eliminate it because it can be done by telemedicine, and then do the same thing along the way. It's like before this, everyone had to go to the pharmacy to pick up their prescriptions. Well, mail order is pretty smart right now, right? So it's like all these different things and are kind of propping themselves up. People are leaning on it now, but I think that's where the innovation is going to come from, because people are going to see it. And it's like, how can we do that better?
Yep.
I'm getting curbside service for the vet. I have a dog who's got a healthcare issue that every 6 weeks we have to go to the vet, and it's really ingenious how they have decided to approach this. And I think it's form follows function. It's actually amazing to keep it still going. There's a way to get there from here.
Yeah, there is. What's really encouraging, in terms of, and that the second question, Teresa, was, an aha moment, is and here's just a few examples that we've discussed here. And I've been on a bunch of other calls lately where the same question has come up. And it's really encouraging and actually really, really positive to see how creative people and businesses have become. Necessity is the mother of invention. It's one of my favorite sayings. And when you turn business people loose to do what they do best, which is really solve problems and fulfill needs, we've got some great stuff going on. And Mike, you just mentioned a couple examples that are going to lead to some orders of magnitude improvements in productivity and all the other good things that come from it. So kudos.
What our own
to
engineers did. Did you all see the article for the Sun-Times that our engineers created a 3D printer for a ventilator? When I saw that come through the Sun-Times, I was cheering, going, "Go Illinois!" The fact that all they did was solve a problem, and they found a way for corporate 3D printers around the globe that can now print the darn things instead of having to worry about manufacturing. I was all in that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's something too that I noticed, that I think a lot of trends like delivery and not going to movies and watching streaming things at home instead. I mean, a lot of those trends I think are going to continue, and those industries aren't going to come back. I think we'll see what happens, but I think a lot of things like working from home and getting delivery and getting entertainment at home, I think a lot of those trends now are accelerated because of this, and I don't think it'll go back to how it was. I think now people will get used to it, and they'll see how much more productive things are like this. And so I think, the trends just keep continuing after this is over.
Absolutely. Praveen, excuse me, to kind of go from that thought, something, and I put the poll up earlier about how many people have a brick and mortar office. Well, how many of you think that we're not going to have employers looking at the space that they were spending rent on or lease space that say, wait a minute, we just stayed 85% as productive and we didn't have anyone in those offices. Do we really need that space? And Teresa, the question also goes to you is, what do you think is going to happen with the commercial real estate market if there's not a need for that office space?
So that's another topic I talked about on the radio. What is the hottest asset class in Chicago? So clearly you guys have to listen to my show. So one of them, office is probably the least predictable in terms of what's going to happen, because there are some people who are the philosophy of that they're not being as productive being away from the office, and they're going to figure out ways to reconfigure so that people feel health and say, that safety. And then there's the other side that like, hey, we don't need to spend all this money on rent, to your point. But I foresee probably the most likely scenario is in several of the commercial real estate sectors is office and retail. Those two sectors are likely, they're going to be ripe for development. So from the investor side, when people come into the market right now, they could either be opportunistic or they could be safe. The safe bet is something like industrial, still somewhat multifamily, because people need a place to live, even though it's a little bit crazy at the moment. But the retail and office end, this is the one that's most unknown, and we could put into that speculative category. But I certainly know developers who are watching those spaces to see if they come down in prices, and hoping that municipalities will be open for rezoning those spaces if it doesn't make sense for the purpose anymore, right? Are they going to be obsolete? But I do feel that there will be some office capacity. It's just going to be operated in a different way than what we're used to.
I know it's going to be really interesting. And as we get close to the top of the hour, and I just want to be, sensitive to everyone's time, I just want to give our LinkedIn group a plug. It's great to see so many new faces out here. There's lots of people that I don't know if have ever come out to one of our events, and it's great that you joined us, and I appreciate it. But we should all be connected more, and if it's virtually, we're gonna try to do this more. But also join us on our LinkedIn group. If you're not a part of it, please do. And if it's not myself, but there's someone that there's other people that are involved that would be more than willing to, may just make a connection to someone that you want to talk to. I mean, the thing that I've noticed over the last, 10 years that I've been a part of the club is that everyone is just really willing and open to talk to another Illini for whatever reason. But in order to kind of get into that hotel and see who's staying overnight, it's you got to jump in. So join the LinkedIn group, tell others to join it, just so you can be part of the community. And I don't know what our next topic is going to be, but there's going to be one coming out in the next couple weeks. We're going to be hosting different topics, and where we had someone from
Mike, what's the
there's
link to
Mindy.
the LinkedIn group?
What's that?
What's the LinkedIn link to the group?
It's just the Suburban Illini Club.
Oh, okay. We can go look
Yeah.
it up.
And Mindy's on from LAS. Mindy, wave.
Hi.
Mindy is with LAS and is helping us find a speaker from within LAS. We're talking about lots of great topics. We're working with athletics. We're going to have some different coaches join, some maybe assistant coaches, do some cool breakdowns. So we're going to have a lot of different topics. And please just kind of look for different postings, whether it be on LinkedIn, the website, our Facebook page. And please join us again for our next edition.
This is a great idea.
Awesome. All righty.
Sounds good.
ILO.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike, thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Mike, for hosting this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks,
Very
Mike.
much.